Most little girls dream of the day they will walk down the aisle, their hearts full of love, ready to marry the person they believe is their soulmate. Many women plan their perfect wedding long before they even meet the man they will one day call their husband. Casey was no different. She had envisioned this day countless times, imagining every detail, from the flowers to the dress, to the moment she would say, "I do." She had spent years preparing for this day, believing it would be the most magical and unforgettable moment of her life. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. The venue was breathtaking, filled with family and friends who had gathered to witness her union with Alex, the man she had loved for 6 years. Their love story had seemed perfect, so perfect that even their families had grown close, intertwining their lives as if fate had destined them to be together forever. Casey had always believed their love was unbreakable, that they would build a life together filled with happiness and trust. That belief shattered in an instant. The morning of her wedding had been filled with joy and excitement. Casey and her bridesmaids were in a luxurious hotel suite, sipping champagne, laughing, and reminiscing about the journey that had brought them to this day. The air buzzed with anticipation, and Casey could feel her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and elation. She was hours away from becoming Mrs. Alex, and nothing else in the world seemed to matter. Then her phone buzzed. At first, she thought it was just another congratulatory message, one of the many she had been receiving all morning. But something about this message felt different. The moment she picked up her phone, one of her bridesmaids jokingly commented, "Your phone is on fire today." Casey smiled, but as she glanced at the screen, her expression changed. The message was from an unknown number. Attached to it were several pictures, followed by a chilling question. "I wouldn't marry him. Would you?" Confused, she opened the images, her breath hitching as her hands began to tremble. What she saw made her stomach drop. The photos were screenshots of text conversations between Alex and another woman. There were flirtatious exchanges, intimate words, and, worst of all, pictures. Selfies of Alex with a dark-haired woman who looked nothing like Casey. The texts went back months, some even as recent as a few days before the wedding. One message in particular sent a cold wave through her body. "This weekend, you and I. It's on Hot Stuff. Bring your A game." The room around her seemed to spin. She clutched the phone tighter, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Could this be a mistake? A cruel joke? But as she scrolled through the messages, the truth became undeniable. Alex had betrayed her, with her heart pounding. Casey excused herself and locked herself in the bathroom. She read through every text, every picture, each one slicing through her heart like a knife. She felt sick, her dream wedding crumbling before her eyes. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her future, had been living a double life. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had a decision to make. Canceling the wedding would be the obvious choice, but the thought of walking away quietly, of letting Alex continue his life without consequence, felt unbearable. He had lied to her. He had humiliated her. And now, in front of their loved ones, she had the chance to show the world exactly who he was. Determined, she emerged from the bathroom and faced her bridesmaids. Their excited chatter faded the moment they saw her face. "What happened?" one of them asked, concern filling her voice. Casey took a deep breath and showed them the messages. Gasps filled the room as her friends crowded around the screen, their faces contorted with shock and anger. "You can't marry him," one of them finally whispered. Casey nodded. "I won't." But she wasn't going to simply walk away. She was going to make sure Alex never forgot this day. The ceremony proceeded as planned. Casey stepped into her wedding gown, her once dreamed-of dress now feeling like nothing more than a costume. As she walked down the aisle, she could see Alex standing at the altar, waiting for her. He smiled, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of confusion, as if he sensed something was off. He had no idea what was coming. The room fell silent as Casey reached the front. The priest began the ceremony, asking the traditional question, Do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Casey took a deep breath. Instead of answering, she reached into her bouquet and pulled out her phone. The murmur of confused whispers spread through the crowd as she turned to face the guests. With a steady voice, she spoke. There will be no wedding today. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Casey held up her phone for everyone to see. This, she said, is the man you all thought I was going to marry. But the truth is, he's been cheating on me for months. Silence hung heavy in the air. Alex's face drained of color. Casey began reading the messages aloud, her voice unwavering. Every word exposed his lies. Every image painted a picture of his betrayal. Her parents wept. Her friends looked furious, and Alex stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words that wouldn't come. There was nothing he could say. The truth was out. With her heart pounding but her head held high, Casey turned to Alex one last time. "You don't deserve me," she said simply. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out, leaving him standing there, exposed, humiliated, and alone. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life had turned into something entirely different. But as she stepped outside, a sense of liberation washed over her. She had been betrayed, but she had refused to be broken. Casey didn't get the wedding she had dreamed of, but she did get something else. Her dignity, her self-respect, and the knowledge that she had chosen herself over a man who never deserved her love. Casey took a deep breath, steadying herself as she faced the sea of stunned faces before her. The weight of the moment was almost unbearable, but she knew what she had to do. There will be no wedding today. Gasps rippled through the room, jaws dropping as guests exchanged bewildered glances, trying to process what they had just heard. Even Alex, the man who had once promised her forever, looked utterly blindsided by her words. His shock quickly turned to desperation as he reached for her hand. But Casey recoiled, pulling away as if his touch alone might taint her. "It seems Alex is not who I thought he was," she continued, her voice unwavering despite the storm raging inside her. The air grew thick with tension as whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. Casey's bridesmaids stood frozen, their hands clutching their bouquets, their expressions a mix of shock and quiet admiration. Alex tried once more to reach for Casey, his face pale, but she flicked his hand away, letting her own bouquet slip from her grasp. It tumbled to the floor in a silent, final farewell to the wedding that would never be. And then, with deliberate intent, Casey revealed the phone she had been clutching tightly in her trembling hands. A hush fell over the room as she began scrolling through the damning messages, reading them aloud one by one. Each word cut deeper than the last, unraveling the truth of Alex's betrayal before the very people who had come to celebrate their love. The screenshots on her phone glowed in the dim light, undeniable proof of his deception. The flirtations, the intimate messages, the secret plans he had made with another woman. It was all there, laid bare for everyone to see. There was no denying it now, no excuse he could offer, no way to spin the truth. The weight of his actions crushed him as he stood there, exposed. His best man, equally mortified, hesitated for only a moment before following him as he turned on his heel and stormed out of the church. The heavy doors swung shut behind them with a loud, resounding echo that seemed to mark the end of everything Casey had once believed in. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex's family sat in their seats, their faces twisted in shock and embarrassment. Some of the guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, while others stared at Casey, waiting for her to say something, anything, to fill the void of confusion left in the wake of her revelation. She knew she owed them an explanation. Taking a deep breath, she turned back to the people who had gathered to witness what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead of a wedding, they had just witnessed a reckoning. "I love all of you," she began, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. "And as horrible as this is, I'm glad you're here." She let her words settle for a moment before continuing. "There will be no wedding reception today, but instead, there will be a celebration of honesty, of self-respect, of finding the courage to walk away from something that isn't right, even when it hurts. A few hesitant claps echoed through the space, quickly followed by a growing wave of applause. The loudest cheers, of course, came from her bridesmaids, their eyes shining with admiration. They knew how much courage it had taken for her to stand before everyone and expose the truth. Though her heart ached, Casey realized she still had something to celebrate. She had just dodged a future filled with deception and heartache. She had almost made the worst mistake of her life, but instead, she had chosen herself. And so, she did what she had always planned to do that night. She threw a party. The reception went on, not as a wedding celebration, but as a tribute to self-love, strength, and new beginnings. Laughter replaced sorrow. Music filled the air, and Casey found herself surrounded by the warmth of the people who truly loved her. She danced with her friends, toasted to her future, and for the first time that day, felt something close to joy. She didn't need a wedding to define her happiness. But why had Alex cheated? How had she not seen the signs? Dr. Rowan Burkhart, a relationship expert, later reflected on Casey's story, explaining that infidelity often stems from two major reasons: dissatisfaction within the relationship or a lack of romantic connection with a partner. Casey had never suspected Alex was unfaithful. Like any couple, they had their ups and downs, but she always believed that love meant working through the hard times. She had chosen to trust him, but trust, she now understood, should never be one-sided. Her story quickly went viral, drawing support and admiration from people around the world. Comments poured in, with strangers applauding her bravery. "A very strong woman who deserves and will certainly find someone better," one user wrote. "Honesty is the best policy, with yourself and with others. Blessings to her," another added. Casey herself reflected on that fateful day with a bittersweet smile. "It was certainly not the wedding day I had planned," she admitted, "but to our credit, it was one hell of a party." Though her heart had been broken, she had emerged from the wreckage with something far more valuable: self-respect, strength, and the knowledge that she had chosen herself over a love that was never real. And if there was one lesson to take from her story, it was this: know your worth and never settle for anything less than the love you truly deserve.